Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Grow Your Path to Wellness. If this is your first time listening, first time joining us, my colleague Amanda and I, we host a new wellness guest every week. Some come back as repeats and cover some new topics or do some series, but our new episodes come out once a week on Sundays. Be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss out on any new episodes coming out. Last week, Chris Leonard joins us, and we really got in there and we broke down the disease of addiction, the stigmas attached to it, the way that it's treated in our society. And then he is actually returning with us next week, not to jump too far ahead, but he's coming back and we're going to talk about the system, the criminal justice system, and so good things coming. So look for that coming next week. But this week we welcome back Lisa Schaefer, so another return guest for our trauma and chakra healing series. And today we'll be covering all things the heart chakra. So welcome back, Lisa. We're, as always, excited to have you back.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here. This is a really great chakra to talk about. And I know we always start getting to that 60-minute time frame, and there's just so much good information that I just can't not share it with everybody. But today, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a meditation at the end. So I'm really excited to share that with you today. But to kind of jump in, obviously we want to do an overview. So we are on the fourth chakra today. So we started with the root, and the root is for grounding, security, safety. We moved up to the sacral chakra, which is for sexual and creativity energy. We last time covered the solar plexus, which is the center of our personal power. And we had a really great discussion about how our personal power is really important to mental health and trauma, and as well as the heart chakra, which is the center of our love and compassion and empathy and forgiveness. And so when we think about trauma and inner childhood trauma or adverse childhood experiences, this really does come into play with that. And how somebody is able to overcome some of the dysfunctions because of the experiences of trauma. So we talked a little bit in the last episode as well about how the chakras, they are energy sources in our body. There are 7 major. These are the 7 major that we're going over. And the really important thing about my view, I don't know how many other people share this view, but my view is that, we really do need to harness the physical part of what we experience to allow that connection with the emotional part. And I know that there's research out there that does support that, but my niche, if you will, is healing trauma in this way.
When I saw Kelsey made the ad cover for this one, I got all excited and my brain went it's amazing how our brains have been influenced by the Hallmark holidays. But I was just immediately like, where am I? What year is it? What time is it? I thought we were on Valentine's Day because she had all the hearts and stuff. And I was like, oh, I got so excited to talk about the heart because who doesn't love? And just you know what I mean? It just brought all the good feelings to me. And yes, you are so right. It's definitely a lot of our, I can probably speak for all of us that's our focus area is let's move through it, get it out of your body. It's stored in there. We got to release it. And I was just talking today about how important that is because unfortunately, even though the research is there and it's been there for decades, we don't get to learn it, and we don't put as much emphasis on it. We have to have our continuing education every couple years to keep our license, and finding ones that are related to these kind of topics, even though the research is there, is so difficult. So I so appreciate that. And I get a lot of my information and I know Lisa does too, and I know Kelsey listens to podcasts and reads books, but we have to often go out there and get our information on these topics through these vehicles. So we're so thankful to have you to share it with the world, because we know it's needed. It's not woo-woo. It's the research backs it. There's just not as much of a backing as there should be.
And just a little kind of snippet in that, because I was at a meeting earlier this week where a new provider is going to be working with one of the companies that I work with. And I said, the crux of helping people is to be trauma informed. And I, referenced some books that they should read. And I said, the reason why trauma still kind of has, I don't know that I want to use the word stigma, but it isn't, this is the woo-woo part of it, because you can't make money off of healing trauma. You can't give a pill, or you can't make billions of money in, unfortunately, our capitalistic society. You can't make money off of that the way that we heal people, or the way that we, the three of us, definitely value healing.
Yeah, I was going to say, Lisa, to like kind of exactly like you said, I can't remember. I'm reading right now in its entirety, The Body Keeps the Score, but it might have been there or something I watched on Netflix. I can't remember, but it resonated with me whenever they said that those medications, they are, they're masking it or kind of blunting the effects of the trauma. But until you get in there and really, with a client today, I had a conversation about how things are stored in the body, because we made a connection for this person, long thing short, but when they exercise, it reminds them of a time that they experienced a traumatic event. And they were like, well, that makes sense as to why, I have this reaction whenever I even think about exercising. And I'm like, and it starts in the body. And she's like, it does, doesn't it? And I'm like, it does.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because, a lot of times people, well, we use the metaphor of being a butterfly, like for that transformation, right? And so like a person who survives trauma does go into this total transformative experience, much like the butterfly does, because we can't go back to who we were before the trauma. And the trauma and the experience makes us completely different. And so we have very little control over the trauma a lot of times. And so what we try to do, which can be dysfunctional, is we try to control it, we try to manage it. And that's where coming to therapy is very helpful, because then we can learn skills that are better at letting go, coming to acceptance, and allowing the past to be in the past, and to learn who we are post-trauma. Because when we try to control it and we try to manage it, it can actually postpone the trauma healing. And so, when you come to therapy and when you are able to process it somatically in the body, and also through talk therapy, we are able to come into this reality of who we are today, and part of that is mindfulness and who we thought we were, and how we can bridge the gap between the two.
Yeah, our bodies are so intelligent, and also so not so intelligent sometimes, given our current culture, right? One of the ways I'm increasing my knowledge, because there's not continuing educations out there, and I already have like hours anyway, but I'm doing, I think I shared it with both of you, the mind body vagus nerve summit thing. And two things came to mind when we were all just talking now, and I was listening to what you were saying, is especially Kelsey's thing with exercise and her client. I thought about the time Lisa told me about a massage and had a similar experience. And then today they were talking about, like if you had an incident where you were in a car accident and it was a red car that hit you. Now, every time you see something red, it doesn't even have to be a car, right? It could be a red shirt. It could be red flowers. It could be red paint on a wall. Your body now associates that with danger. And they were talking about how small someone's life with trauma can get, because the body is over calculated, right? Like over decided that they need to protect themselves that much. And the other thing that came to mind is that one of the other speakers was talking about how oftentimes clients will say that they don't have feelings, or they don't know what they're feeling, or they don't have emotions. And it's not that they can't feel or recognize their emotions. It's that they're afraid to, because they're avoiding the physical response that goes along with that emotion. So it just, I don't know, all that kind of came together for me as you were talking.
Yeah, like whenever that client, we broke that down more, of course, in that session, and exactly like you said, you know, we connected like the trauma with the exercise, but then it's like that narrative of like, well, she was telling herself that she was just lazy and is incapable of exercising, or, you know, and then you break that down even more, and it's like, no, you're avoiding those physical responses you get when you're exercising.
And in a way, it's kind of like exposure therapy, right? Because we have to learn how, when our heart races or when we have shortness of breath, that fight, flight, or freeze, you know, part of our brain is kicking in, but no, we're okay. We are safe. We are grounded, right? And so that's where some of the use of yoga, mindfulness comes to help kind of create this sense of here and now. And, you know, the other part, which, you know, we've talked about in other series as well, is that trauma causes the physical illness, right? When it's stuck. And so we can have weakened immune systems, we can have autoimmune disorders, where our adrenal glands aren't working, where we have terrible sleep, either because of nightmares or just because it's completely disrupted, changing in eating habits where it's either, you know, maybe we restrict, or maybe we emotionally eat, and you know, and unfortunately, addiction can play a part in there as well. And the bottom line is that people who are walking around who are traumatized don't know how to practice self-care, or they have poor practices of self-care. And so again, coming to therapy, we are helping people learn how to gain skills or refine skills that they already have.
We could so talk about trauma and where it's stored in the body all day.
All day.
Lisa, can you bring the heart chakra into all this? Where does that come into play?
Yeah. So if you can imagine, the heart chakra is located in our chest. And so that's kind of like the brief part of it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But it is associated with the thymus gland, which is where the T cells are. So again, when we're talking about illness and blockages, and this is very important, that, you know, our lymphocytes, they are responsible for keeping us healthy against bacteria, viruses, and fungus. And so again, if we have blockages in our heart chakra, this could be a reason why we may find ourselves ill. And then again, you know, we're talking in metaphors today. The reason why people say you have a broken heart, right? So again, our heart chakra, it's about compassion, empathy, and connection. And so think about like how symbolic that might be for somebody whose energy is depleted in that, because of trauma, because of grief, maybe bereavement. You know, we've lost a loved one or a status. I mean, we're still living in a pandemic, and people are still experiencing tons of stressors because of that. And so someone who might have a broken heart, what do you think they're going to experience? Tightness of chest, maybe the inability to breathe. And so they may go to their doctor. And I know, Amanda, you have a lot of experience with people going and seeking assistance in the medical field, and tests are run and nothing comes up from the test, right? And so then this person might be maybe made to feel that they're, you know, having made up these symptoms, or that they are maybe making something bigger than what it is, but this is what's being experienced by the person, right?
Yeah, it often would come back as, oh, it's just anxiety. Oh, it's just stress. Okay. That's not just.
No,
it's a big deal. The stress, I mean, and that's another thing that frustrates me too, is like the impact of stress on our bodies has been known for centuries. And the ailments that come out of chronic stress. I mean, and it's in the CDC knows, right? There's reports and data actively about the impacts of stress on our bodies and the direct relation with chronic health conditions. And so I'm over here like trying to push that out into the world, and then someone goes to their doctor who might say, okay, yeah, that's unusual, or you've been pushing it enough, or you've been expressing that enough, I'll send you to a cardiologist, or we'll get you some stress tests. And then it comes back normal, and then they're just kind of out of, well, I don't know, that's it. And it can be really disheartening for people, especially when they know, right? And so it shuts you down even more, and it's like, well, I can't trust myself. Maybe I don't know what's going on with me. I'm not going to bother asking, and it isolates us even more.
And I was going to say too that the blatant, like, it blows my mind that I say this all the time, but we're in 2021, and when they go in for like these initial intakes to set up those tests, more likely than not, a single question isn't asked about any stressors in your life. Every now and then you'll find, a provider that asks these things. Have you experienced a loss? Has anything traumatic or overwhelming for you happened lately? Do you have, a mental health and wellness, treatment history? Like, I feel like it just goes straight to, what are you physically experiencing? Here's this, we're going to get this set up, and we'll see what it says.
Yeah, and I think, and I know I've said on a previous episode as well, like when I go to my provider, who I've seen for many years, every time we go for the yearly checkup and the blood draws, I say, remember, I have these adverse childhood experiences, and this is what my number is, and this is what the research shows, and so we need to be mindful of this. And now that I'm getting older, like, how are we going to be preventative instead of, oh, holy crap, now all of these things are happening, and it's more reactive instead of proactive, right? Yeah. So some of the other things, obviously, that comes with blockages in the heart is feeling lonely, holding grudges. We probably see a lot within our clients where people lack trust in others. And a lot of that is because of their experiences in life, where people may isolate themselves because of that lack of trust or that lack of connection to others. The feeling of jealousy over others, having a fear of intimacy. So again, that fear of connection, we want it, but we don't know how to do it, right? And so being very self-critical and judgmental of yourself and of others. So a lot of this, it does sound like of self, and that belongingness. And, we've talked about, basic needs and where that kind of falls with basic needs. And self-hate is something that I know that we talk about with our clients a lot. And self-hate, not only is it in the heart chakra because we find ourselves to be unlovable, maybe because of experiences that we've had or things that have been said to us, but it's also in the root and in our solar plexus chakra as well. So again, when we're talking about whole body, this is very much built on each level. We're now at the 4th level. So what dysfunctional things are going on underneath that might be carrying up through the system, right?
Oh, Lisa, you just said something that sparked, I don't know, this summit is really getting me. I told you all I was listening, my favorite, inner child healing workbook author was on there today. I'm not going to butcher her name. I'm so sorry. But Recovery of Your Inner Child is the book, and she's written a lot of other great inner child healing ones. She's an art therapist. But she was talking about, like, because you said that self-hate and dang it, I lost the train of thought. Self-hate and messages we received, right? And she was saying how it goes from you're not lovable, you're not worthy, you're not enough, to I. And when it starts to become I, that's where it really gets deep rooted, and we really start to accept that as a fact, and it becomes a schema for our life then.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've had yesterday, or 2 client conversations that I've had today, and I always say confidentiality is a thing, so I'm not gonna tell the stories, but like my last client that I had right before this, we're doing a pretty in-depth trauma narrative, like with abuse that happened with a primary caregiver, and we're going into part 3 of it, and I was like, we were debriefing and talking about some shifts that her perspective still is shifting. So for me, I was like, did you see that shift from I am unlovable, I break everything, to that, where that was coming from? And you can slowly see it uprooting from I to, well, that happened to me because of them.
Yeah, I think that's the beautiful point too, is that trauma isn't a life sentence.
No. And it's very interesting in this conversation that we're here having, because, I do have a lot of knowledge on adverse childhood experiences, and in that literature, it talks about how self-hate is a learned behavior. And so, this definitely resonates with that, because, self-hate is angry energy, actually. And then that anger is actually coming from fear. And our fear is because we cannot stand up for ourselves. And so then when we can't stand up for ourselves, that starts again in the root chakra and hierarchy of needs in Erik Erikson's developmental stages of changes. And so, again, we are talking about building blocks for ascension, for self-actualization, as Maslow called it. So, these things are really important to look at and to examine, is why do I feel that about me? And, one of the things that I really work on is personalization with a lot of my clients. It's like, well, what are the facts that lead you to believe that that is true? And what are the facts that show us that maybe that was about that person and not about you at all, right?
And a big, the personalization, and then how that ties into, I tell my clients, we're going to get good at noticing my physiological responses whenever somebody says something that triggers those beliefs for me. So not just what are the thoughts and what are the evidence, but, oh, I just noticed myself, I call it, like with my teen clients, I call it getting prickly. I felt this physical response, and then it ties into, okay, why did I just have that? And then that evidence as to that had nothing to do with me, in that moment.
Yeah, and I think really great therapists, I don't even know if that's I guess it's technically self-disclosure. But I was talking to Lisa before you joined, Kelsey, about co-regulation in a really funny way. But I think that's a gift and a talent for somatic-based, mind-body-based practitioners. Is, I don't know if you two do this, but I absolutely do. If one of my clients is sharing something like that, I'll pause and I'll say, oh, because they're just kind of rambling on with it, right? As staying in their head because it's uncomfortable to be in their body. And I'll say, can we pause for a second? And then I'll repeat back what they said. And then I'll just sit in a moment and I'll say, that feels really heavy. Where do you feel that? Because I kind of feel that in my chest, or my heart kind of sunk when you said that, or, kind of guiding them to really check in with themselves I don't know, I find it super beneficial in my work and normalizing, right? That shouldn't, not normalizing. I don't know, normalizing that shouldn't be normal. That you just go, does that make sense? Like that you just
humanizing it, like, okay, we're experiencing this as a human, but it's not serving me, or it's, causing my, I say dysfunction, and I don't know, it's causing me some kind of dysfunction when I have this automatic response, and then I react on that.
Yeah. And it's more into that out of body intellectualization. We're telling the story, right? And so that's kind of what we had talked about, I think in the previous episode, about how to not be a witness, but to have the experience, because we are human beings doing, right? So, yeah. And then kind of talking about, like loneliness. Loneliness is not only not feeling connected to other people, it's not feeling connected to ourselves, and so again, we're kind of saying all of this again, where our clients come in, what self-care rituals do they have? What eating foods, and even though we were kind of chatting beforehand, no shame in what we're all eating for dinner tonight, right? So what are our food systems looking like, and is it okay to have that order in day, and not feel shameful about it, and give yourself grace because you're a human being doing, right? And so who do you surround yourself with that can be spiritually uplifting and, raising your vibration to be a better human? And we want to surround ourselves with people who look forward to the future and who value making a difference, right? And then codependency, and I know we talked a little bit about codependency before, and this is the imbalance where our love is, going out towards other people, and it's a one-sided, dysfunctional relationship. And so, I know we kind of talked a little bit about codependency in a previous episode as well, but when we find that we are responsible for another person's self-esteem, worth, connection, then we are depleting the energy of ourselves. And so we are giving up who we are for the sake of another person. And so then we may find that we have poor boundaries. We ourselves may have low self-esteem. We may not be able to communicate our feelings effectively. We have a fear of abandonment. And so again, a lot of that does come back to those early childhood experiences. The fear of being ignored and being shamed for our experiences. And I know, Kelsey, you do a lot of content about that with your teens and experiences that they have, which I just love whenever I see anything like that. And so, having alignment within our heart chakra, we want to feel surrounded by love, surrounded by compassion, and connected to ourselves and to the world around us.
As you go through this stuff, Lisa, because I do so much work, I mean, it's become, I guess, a niche of mine, this just screams like attachment trauma to me. Like everything that you're saying, I'm like, yeah, like those individuals that I work with, this one really resonates. Well, me and my own personal life, and then also the primary populations I work with. Like it doesn't, and like the stuff, like every part of this is like really resonating with, like, I have no, like, I don't know how to put it into words, like the connection with self and the physical self, but then completely putting my physical self aside, and the brain thinking that that's making me feel safe. And at one time it did. Like having that compassion and not shaming myself because these behaviors developed for me and served me a purpose for some reason at some point in time.
Yeah, and that's where I will get on my soapbox about the DSM. So controversial, I know. There's a time and a place for diagnosis and pathologizing and all the things that the old cisgender white men created. Yet, when we talk about all these things, it's like if I think about all the diagnoses that we could diagnose somebody with in our field, it's a natural consequence given everything that we've just talked about. You know, if you had these traumas in your life, if you had unsecure attachments with your caregivers, if you've had adverse childhood experiences, if your basic needs weren't met, if the developmental stage, which is all research based again, so chakras just align with all of it, of course you're going to meet the criteria for a quote unquote borderline personality disorder. Of course you're going to meet the criteria for grief or depression or anxiety or PTSD. So I just had to throw that out there. Go on my little soapbox.
Well, and we are, you know, the only species that can, you know, talk about that in terms of needing that connection for relationship. And so we are wired for connection, and we are wired for relationship, belongingness, acceptance, affection, love. And, you know, we talked about, you know, Erickson's stages of changes, and, you know, intimacy versus isolation is where forming loving and intimate relationships is the crucial part. And this is age, you know, 18 to 40. And so by age 18, we know if you check however many boxes of the adverse childhood experiences, right? What is that going to look like for you 18 to age 40? You're probably going to struggle with secure attachment to other people, intimacy, fearing commitment, probably depression and anxiety, social, people who struggle socially, either large crowds or even on one-on-one. So this is, as Amanda said, you know, very much in alignment with all of evidence-based, scientifically based research, right? And so I mentioned a little bit earlier that the heart chakra, as we can imagine, is located in the chest. And so it's interesting, you know, because we talked a little bit earlier about, you know, the broken hearts and what does that symbolize for a lot of people. And while the heart is a little, you know, to the left side of our cavity, and, you know, the chakras run along the vagus nerve. And again, we know that the vagus nerve is part of a very important gut-brain biome, and how it's connected to many of our organs in our system that we need. The other really interesting thing is that the heart chakra is the bridge between the lower half of the chakras and the higher half. So we have the physical world, which are the first three, and then we have the upper part, which is connected to the unseen, that more ascended type of thinking. And so we have, you know, the examples of internal versus external, masculine with the feminine. We have the earth and the sky, and above and below. And so the heart chakra's symbol is two triangles that are like flipped. So it kind of looks like the Star of David, if you're familiar with that. And it is associated with the element of air. And so if you think about love, right, and what does it feel like, and how you can be enveloped in love, and like air, how you can be enveloped in air. And so there is this, like, within us, all around us, right? We breathe air, we bring in air, And so there's very much an embodied sense of that, of our heart center, of having our heart open, to have free flowing love. And this is one of the really cool things that I love about this part of the whole chakra system as well, is that typically when you look at a chart, it is the green color. And green is associated with rebirth, revitalization, stress relief, creativity, and the perspective of this is that the yellow of the solar plexus, which is just below, and the blue of the throat chakra, which we will talk about in the next, come together to make green.
I was muted, but I was like, huh, that was I was like, well, that makes sense. Like, because I'm a newbie to this information. So as you're saying it, my brain's piecing it together. And I'm like, of course. Now I wouldn't expect any different.
Now you wouldn't. Although I'm going to throw a little bit of a zinger in there too, because then pink is also associated with the heart chakra. And the reason for that is because red is the root chakra and white of the crown chakra, and they come together to make pink. And so it is the ultimate balance, where we have intuitive qualities, where we have this universal and unconditional love. So it is a very interesting aspect where we can bring this higher sense of self in connection. This is the point of bringing the higher sense of self in connection to the physical sense.
You said green, and I was like,
I did the
green,
same thing. I was like, green for the
heart. Yeah, I was like, no, it's red. It's supposed to be red. Lisa, the ad was red. Kelsey, we need to add red, and it was supposed to be green.
We can have it be a Valentine's Day heart. It's
but
okay.
now it all makes sense.
It does. And so, yeah, I have some favorite pieces that I have here that I brought, which I know, unless they are on the YouTube channel, but I have these 2 pink turtle doves, which I love because, you know, turtle doves are, I don't know, Home Alone has always made me think of the turtle doves that go together, right? And so, and they sit on a lily pad that is made out of green jade. So why they sit on a lily pad, I have no idea, but that is a favorite piece of mine. That is in my office.
Hey, can I squirrel for a second?
Please do.
Something I saw on TikTok, of course. Did you know that lily pads can't get wet? I watched this person on a kayak.
Yeah.
Trying to put water.
It reminds you of like a duck almost, like how it just rolls. Does it roll off of them?
It rolls off.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has a waterproof sealant on it.
Yeah.
I mean,
sorry, that was my squirrely moment.
No, I mean, I know they float on top of the water, but that makes sense because what if it rains or if it floods? They always float.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another podcast, Amanda. So the heart chakra is also connected with the physical sense of touch. And so imagine embracing another person. What goes into that? Our chests come together. If this is an intimate embrace, our arms wrap around each other, and we might, hold ourselves to the shoulder blades kind of. And so these are very intimate parts of our bodies that are touching in this moment. So hugs, I love hugs. They absolutely activate the heart chakra, and it allows for an exchange of energy between 2 people. So have you ever gotten a hug and you're like maybe down in the dumps and you got a hug from somebody and that just like restarted your mojo?
when I'm in a not so great place and someone hugs me, it makes me cry more. It makes me like super vulnerable. I'll be like, okay, fine, you can give me a hug, but don't dare rub my back or I'm gonna lose it, because I just get lost in it. But as soon as you started talking about the physical touch and the embrace, I instantly went to the trauma piece, and folks that I regularly hear, I don't feel safe. I need my own space. I don't want to be touched. So how do you get someone to the point of feeling, and I know that's very individualized, but what are things that aren't touch based that people could work on balancing out that chakra and maybe getting closer to being able to have a physical embrace?
Oh, absolutely. So then there are yoga poses that can do that. So child's pose kind of sounds like what it is. You are, there's a couple different variations. So my favorite is where my toes touch, my knees are kind of out, and I'm folded forward. And I love, this is probably one of my favorite ways to also get Reiki when I'm in a yoga class, is when my back is to whoever is giving it. I just love Reiki, getting Reiki on my backside in those types of poses. And one of my favorite heart openers is a modified fish. So you're going to kind of be propped up. So think about like kind of reclining back in a really nice, like comfy spot with some bolsters and blocks holding you up. So it's kind of like a supported shavasana in a way. And this heart space is going to be open so that you can breathe through there. The other thing that I want to say as well is, you know, our heart space can also sync up to other people. So partnering, you know, what did you say earlier? Amanda, you said shared.
Co-regulation.
Yes, co-regulation. Thank you. So this would be part of that, so that our hearts actually can come into synchronization with people around us. So that shows that our hearts actually have intelligence, and our brain waves, which we will talk about as well when we talk about mirror neurons, when we talk about the third eye, but we do have the ability to synchronize with other people. So it doesn't have to be, and pet.
Dogs and cats. There's research on emotional support animals and being able to help regulate your breath and your blood support. Okay. No, blood pressure. When you are petting an animal or one's sitting on your lap or purring on you or whatever. So if you're like, I'm not in the mood for a human, but you got a pet and you really like your pets. Kelsey, you're muted.
Thank you. You think that almost 2 years into this, I would catch it every time. But I was gonna say that one because I catch myself doing it, like with my dog. Even if like I get dysregulated in between, you know, sessions, or not like a bad way, just a natural human way. You know, we take on a lot, and if I feel something about myself physically, you know, I'll just like literally, it's my dog. Anybody who's probably been in the background of a podcast at this point, but he's always with me. And so I'll sit on the floor with him and pet him. And then I also teach, and I was going to ask you, Lisa, if this falls into here, and it might not, but starting out with like, and my clients, I tell them up front, I was like, it sounds kind of woo-woo, but doing the self-soothing, like, you know, walking through actual steps of embracing ourselves physically, getting used to the sensation and what it feels like, and then like, I don't know, like the butterfly tapping kind of stuff. Does that fall into here or no?
Yes, and I actually even like to tap with the hug. So like the full-on hug. Yeah. So yeah, this is the wonderful thing, is that we are made to believe that we have to look outside of ourselves to find healing. And the healing is here. We are the captains of our ship. We just might need some directions. And that's why, people come to therapy and get, the map. But we follow the map. We are the ones who do the work. And these are the things that are in alignment with us, that we practice and, are going to make us feel the ooey gooey, the goods, instead of the prickly pears, right? So the heart chakra is the gateway to all love, like all love, divine love, love for myself, love for you. And so when we have trauma, that can be a struggle to keep that open, so that we don't feel hopeless and we don't feel that the pain is never going to go away.
I think, I'm guessing, because I know it can be over and under, right? I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
Like, they can go the opposite way too, where someone's sharing too much love.
Yes. And so there's consequences for both, right? So like if I am giving too much, so we're going to look at that person who might be codependent. So they're not giving their love to themselves, but they're giving it to everybody else. And what are the consequences of that? Versus somebody who might feel that they can't give love out and they keep it all in. And what are the consequences of that? So yeah, there's going to be consequences in the dysregulation, in the blockage of how that is operating, for sure. So some mantras or affirmations that we can say is, I love effortlessly. I am love is really strong, right? So I am love. Love is my guiding truth and I follow it. I just find that to be so strong. I choose love every day. So we do have a choice. And today I choose love. My heart is filled with joy and gratitude. So some affirmations to kind of help open that up. Another yoga pose that we didn't talk about, which you can do even if getting down on the ground isn't very easy for you, is cat-cow. So you can do that from the chair. You can do that on the ground and all fours, even on the ground seated. I love me some cat-cow for sure. I had talked a little bit about rose quartz because rose is pink, right? Yeah. It is gentle but powerful, rose quartz is, and it is the premier love stone, believe it or not. And it gives our knowledge of self-love. Green calcite, which is what I have here in my hand, which this is probably one of those rocks or stones or crystals that I was just kind of perusing, and it was calling to me, and I had to have it the day that I bought it. And I even remember what shelf it was on and at my favorite metaphysical shop. And I always can go in there and find good stuff. But it clears the heart of stress and it helps promote relaxation. So I must have needed that day. And then jade, which is part of my little turtle doves here. It harmonizes and balances the heart chakra, and it allows life force energy to flow. So
it's so interesting to me because like my pelvic floor exercises that I've been doing for pregnancy, cat-cow, child's pose. I don't remember if it was my pelvic floor specialist or my midwife, like 3 weeks ago or a month ago or something, told me to start carrying around rose quartz. It's just everything's aligning. And then I like to pair, I know sometimes you talk about essential oils. I don't know if you were going to mention any today, but I like to pair one that's called Joy with my heart, and I'll put it on my heart and rub it over there and say, I welcome joy into my heart, and I send joy out to the world, or something like that with my affirmations.
I actually put joy on before we started today. I was getting all centered, like all of the centered. Yeah.
Like and then I think this is a fire quartz that I'm holding, like the other one that I'm holding, but I literally had the two that you said. This is a weird universe kind of day, guys.
Yeah. But essential oils, yeah, essential oils are really great for opening up and bringing balance into chakras. Rose has antibacterial and anti-infectious properties. It's an anti-inflammatory and an antidepressant. Here's a very interesting thing about rose is that it tends to be true rose essential oil tends to be pretty expensive because it takes like almost 250,000 rose petals to make 5 milliliters. It's actually 242,000 ish to make 5 milliliters.
Yeah, it's like 22 pounds.
Yeah, it's a
It's
lot.
like one of the highest frequency oils too. When
It
you're talking about
is.
raising your vibration.
It is, and it resonates at 320 megahertz. So it is. I didn't see that at all. It is a tonic for the heart, and it so soothes and eases emotional pain. It also can blend well with cedarwood, sandalwood, cypress, lemon, patchouli, frankincense, and lavender. And then another essential oil that I wanted to touch on is clary sage. So it helps helps fight feelings of fatigue, depression. It helps release muscles, and it's also anti-infectious. Here's a fun fact is that you should not use it if you are pregnant or while nursing. A little fun fact to share with that. But it does blend well.
But if you're wanting to give an eviction notice at the end of pregnancy,
I mean, it's like I'm bathing in it.
This is not medical advice. However, I've heard if you inhale some clary sage at the end of your pregnancy because you want to give an eviction notice, that's not a terrible thing. But yes, if you're trying to if you're trying to be fertile and not mess with early pregnancy, absolutely yes.
Yeah.
But it's great for your hormones otherwise.
And so it also blends well with chamomile, lavender, rose, sandalwood, and frankincense. And so at the beginning, I had said that we were going to end today's podcast with a little bit of a meditation. Yeah, very excited. Excellent. And so each series episode, we've been also talking about mudras, which are kind of yoga poses for your hands, right? And so today we're going to talk about the Padma mudra, which is the lotus. And so this increases your heart strength, helping to calm the mind, and it stimulates your immune system. And so basically what we are going to do is we're going to bring the arms and the elbows kind of together near each other. So we want this to be in, right? So we want our arms and our hands to be in. Our pinkies are going to touch and our thumbs are going to touch. The palms of our hands are going to touch. And we're kind of holding open our fingers here, right? So it's kind of like we're holding a bowl, maybe. Yeah, bring your fingers out a little bit more. And so this is the mudra that we're going to be holding. Now, if this is not something that feels good to you, you are absolutely open to maybe bring your hands to prayer center or put your hands on your knees, but we're going to come into an easy seat. So kind of get grounded down. If you're seated in a supported chair, maybe kind of noticing the weight and how it's distributed in between your toes and how your heels and how you're supported and how does the ground feel. And maybe as you are coming into your breath, with each inhale and exhale, we're going to relax and come in to notice and be aware. And maybe our knees are stacked over our ankles underneath our chairs. And maybe we notice how our seat, how our root is connected into the chair. Or maybe you're on the floor, or maybe you're in easy seat. We're just noticing how this feels. And we're going to let the spine be long, but not stiff, but we want to be tall. And we want to check to see if our shoulders are stacked over our hips. And maybe rolling back our shoulders and bringing them down away from our ears to create space and openness in our heart chakra. And with each inhale and exhale, deepen into your relaxation. And for those of you who might be listening, there might be moments where there's silence, and that's okay. We're still here. Just continue to breathe. Bring attention and awareness to the spaces that exist in between each inhale and exhale. Can you pause at the top of your inhale or maybe at the bottom of your exhale? What is your experience? And coming into this space, coming into your breath, do you notice the strength and the rhythm of the beating of your heart? And what is this experience of the pulsating, beating heart in between each breath? How are you cultivating awareness within your breath, with the sensations of your body and your beating heart? Notice your heart's energy. Maybe does it bring you warmth? Do you feel any vibrations along the body? Maybe this meditation, you experience calmness. And if there's any muscle aches, just raising your awareness and simply noticing the sensations. And just know that at any point in time, you can do what serves you, but you don't have to change anything if you don't want to. We're just here to be aware and notice. So I want you to bring awareness to the lotus mudra. The lotus is something that's really special to me, and the story of the lotus, it is in part why I got a lotus tattoo. And so if you don't know the story of the lotus, the lotus grows out of a body of murky water. And perhaps as you ground your feet, as the root of a lotus does, and at the bottom, where the stem grows up, and it reaches up the spine towards the warmth and the light above. With each breath, you emerge out of the cold darkness of the water. And when your bud breaks the surface, it is tightly closed. And with each breath, envision the bud opening. And as it opens, you witness this exquisite flower, completely unmarred from the mud from which it arises. And as you visualize your blossom, it can be any color you wish. And you're visualizing the pure radiance. And at the center of your lotus, there's a beam that shoots upward. And this radiance connects to your heart energy and to your heart source. And this radiance flows through you like a river. And you experience pure love and knowledge. This radiance joins you and your loved ones eternally. And you are connected to all creation. You are all one. As your lotus blooms, you are held safely within the love of your own heart. Notice, does this radiance pulse with each beat of your heart? Allow your experience to flow as it is. Know that the light of your heart supports and surrounds you fully, completely, offering protection and well-being. Maybe you set an intention or a mantra. And when you are ready, go ahead and deepen your breath. Maybe you exhale, open mouth, sigh it out. Maybe you wiggle your fingers and your toes. Maybe you blink your eyes open if they were closed. Maybe you lick your lips. Yeah, maybe you do a big stretch. And we'll meet with our hands in prayer center, thumb knuckles resting on the chest of the heart. And they say to you, the divine light in me honors and salutes the divine light in you. Thank you for listening and sharing space with us today. Namaste.
I was muted, but I said namaste with you. So I just need to like record you. Like as you were talking, I was like, oh, these are like the YouTube hypnobirthings I fall asleep to. This is very nice.
Yeah, it's really funny because like when I first started doing like my yoga teacher training, I was like certain that I was going to be the person who was going to be like teaching power, like super powerful classes. And like I love the ooey gooey. I love to help people feel cocooned because it's so inviting and like it just, and of course everything always happens how it's supposed to, but yeah, that's what I want to share and do with everybody. So yeah.
And you had to throw this like beautiful, make me want to ugly cry, but I'm in the middle of a meditation metaphor in there about this lotus coming from the dirty water.
Mm-hmm.
I feel physically more relaxed. And I was like noticing when you were like, just notice. And I feel like I do well at that, but then we all like lose it. So then like doing that meditation, I was like, it took me a minute just to notice my heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then once I got there and it was.
Yeah.
It only took us like getting halfway through the chakras for you to be like, hey, we should do this. So I hope that you do it every one now.
Well, you know, yeah, well, yeah, it definitely was. And I don't know, like, I was just like, I wonder, and here's the thing, maybe it's because we've been doing the little meditation, and I'm like, that would be fun to do because I do like doing that. So, yeah. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you for being here again, Lisa. Okay, so we made it halfway through the chakras. Mm-hmm. So Lisa will be back in September, on September 19th, to talk all about the throat chakra, which I'm very familiar with, having some imbalance with. Very excited. Looking forward to that. Next week, and for the next few weeks, it might just be Kelsey hosting with our guests, as next Sunday is my due date, and I'm hoping not to go too far past, but it'll be on some maternity leave, and so you'll probably just hear and see Kelsey for a little while here. But next week, like Kelsey mentioned earlier, we have Chris Leonard coming back talking about addiction and the criminal justice system and communities and what kind of all impacts that. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe. As always, give us comments and feedback on what you want to hear, and we will see you / talk to you next week.
Take care.
Bye.